Okay, so we are going to find the solution or solutions to each equation. So remember, we're going to use completing the square for each one of these. So the first one, we have x squared plus 12x plus 36 is equal to 0. So when we complete the square, the first thing we want to do is we want to get this out of the way so that we can create a perfect square trinomial. So we're going to subtract 36 from both sides. So we're going to get x squared plus 12x plus, but we're going to leave a blank where that 36 was. We're going to fill that in with something else, is equal to negative 36. And if we're going to add something to one side of the equation, we have to add that exact same thing on the other side of the equation. And so now what we're going to do is we are going to figure out what is going to go inside these parentheses. So we get x, and then we're going to take half of this linear term here. So linear because it doesn't have an exponent bigger than 1. So this would be x plus 6. And is equal to, and then we're going to figure this out here in just a second. So to get what this is going to be equal to, we need to square this number here. So 6 squared is 36. And we're going to add 36 to the other side because whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. So this is going to be equal to 0. And then we want to undo squaring this, which means we have to do the inverse. So we're going to do the inverse of squaring, which is square root. And remember that we need to take the positive and negative versions when we do the square root. So we have x plus 6 now is equal to 0. And positive and negative 0 don't exist. It's just 0. So we don't really get more than one answer here. So we are going to get x is equal to negative 6 for the first one. So the solution up here would be negative 6. For the second one, we want to do x squared plus 4 is equal to 0. And because there's only two terms here, we can actually just either solve by inspection or we can do the square root. So if we subtract 4 from both sides, we'll get x squared is equal to negative 4. And we know that we don't really have a square root of negative 4, but now with these imaginary numbers, we can. So we're going to get x on this side. Remember, we need to take the positive and negative versions of this over here. So we get x is equal to a positive 2i, and x is also equal to a negative 2i. So we have two different answers here. We have 2i and we have negative 2i. Okay, for the third one, I don't really want to complete the square on this one because it's kind of a yucky one, but we'll see what happens. X squared plus 1/2 x minus 14 is equal to 0. So we could do quadratic formula. Factoring is not going to work with this one. We could do complete the square. For me, I would probably try to do quadratic formula. So remember, x is equal to the opposite of the b term. So here's a, here's b, and this whole piece here is c. So x is equal to the opposite of b, which is negative 1/2, plus the square root of b squared, which is 1/2 squared, minus 4 times a is 1, so I'm not even going to write it, and then negative 14. So x is equal to, all over 2 times 1, which is just 2. So x, move this down a little bit here, x is equal to negative 1/2, should be plus or minus the square root of 1/2 squared is 1/4, plus, because we have a negative times a negative, that would be 56. And then this is going to be all over the square root, or all over 2. Okay, so we get negative 1/2 plus or minus the square root of 56.25. Ooh, that was fun. 25 divided by 2. So 56.25 is 7.5. So we have negative 1/2 plus 7.5 over 2. And we also have negative 1/2 minus 7.5 over 2. So negative 1/2 plus 7.5 would be positive 7. And so 7 divided by 2, we can either put that in as 7 over 2, or we can put it in as 3.5. And then the other value, so negative 1/2 minus 7.5 would be negative 8, and negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. And the last one, x squared minus 4x plus 8, x squared minus 4x plus 8 is equal to 0. I can't factor this one. I could either use the quadratic formula, but this one would be an easy one to do completing the square with. So let's do completing the square on this one. So the reason I want to do completing the square with this one is because my coefficient on my quadratic term is 1, and my linear term is an even number. So if you have a 1 coefficient on your quadratic term and an even number on your linear term, sometimes that's easier to do completing the square. So the first thing we want to do is we want to move the 8 over to the other side. So we have x squared minus 4x plus something. And the reason that it's plus is because anytime that you square a number, you always get a positive. So this is always going to be plus something. When we move the 8 to the other side, remember it changes signs. So 8 plus something, because whatever we add to this side, we're going to have to add to this side as well. So let's figure out our perfect square trinomial. We're going to take the x. We're going to take half of this number here. So this is negative 4. We're going to put a negative 2. And we're going to square that. So we get plus 4 over here. We also get plus 4 over here. And so when we do negative 8 plus 4, we get negative 4. So we need to do the inverse of squaring something, which is to take the square root. And this, so we get x minus 2 is equal to, now the negative sign on the 4 becomes I, and then we're just taking the square root of 4, which is 2. So this would be 2i, and remember we need a positive and a negative, so this is a positive and a negative, and then we're going to add 2 to both sides. So we get x is equal to positive 2 plus 2i, and we also get that x is equal to positive 2 minus 2i. So the two answers that we would have here would be 2 plus 2i and 2 minus 2i.